The anointing on your life that you've been praying for, fasting for, and desperately asking God to increase isn't the comfortable blessing you thought it would be. It's a dangerous assignment that will isolate you from crowds, separate you from people you love, and mark you as a target for spiritual attacks that most Christians will never experience because they're not carrying the level of authority, purpose, and divine assignment that makes hell nervous and heaven attentive. Right now, you might be confused about why your life got harder after you surrendered to God, why people started leaving after you got serious about holiness, why opportunities closed after you committed to obedience, and why the closer you get to God, the lonelier your journey becomes, and the more intense the spiritual warfare gets in ways that make you question whether you're doing something wrong, when the reality is that you're doing something dangerously right. But what you're about to discover will change how you see the isolation, the attacks, the closed doors, and the unexplainable resistance you've been facing, because these aren't signs that God has abandoned you or that you've missed His will. These are the unmistakable markers that you're carrying an anointing so dangerous to the kingdom of darkness that the enemy has assigned extra demons to distract you, discourage you, and destroy you before you fully step into the assignment that could shift atmospheres, liberate captives, and advance God's kingdom in ways that threaten everything hell has been building. Because comfortable Christians with surface-level commitments don't experience the level of warfare, isolation, and testing that dangerously anointed believers face. And if your life has been relatively peaceful, your relationships have remained unchanged, and your walk with God hasn't cost you anything significant, you might be religious, but you're not dangerous to the devil. If you're tired of shallow Christianity that produces fans instead of warriors, and you're ready to understand why your anointing has made your life more complicated instead of more comfortable, you need to subscribe to Faith Ablaze Network and hit that notification bell right now, because what I'm about to reveal will either confirm that you're on the right path despite how difficult it feels, or convict you that it's time to stop playing church and start walking in the dangerous anointing that makes hell panic and heaven mobilize. The enemy doesn't waste high-level attacks on low-level threats, and if you've been under intense spiritual assault, experiencing supernatural opposition, and dealing with unexplainable setbacks, you need to understand that you're not cursed, you're dangerously anointed, and the devil is terrified of what will happen when you stop doubting yourself and start operating in the full authority God has placed on your life. The first sign that you're dangerously anointed by God is that you experience an unusual level of spiritual warfare that goes beyond normal Christian struggles and includes direct demonic attacks, supernatural opposition, and coordinated efforts to destroy your peace, your faith, and your assignment before you can fully walk in your calling. Ephesians 6:12 reveals that we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. And while every believer faces some level of spiritual opposition, dangerously anointed people experience warfare that's more intense, more persistent, and more strategic because hell has recognized the threat level you represent and has assigned specific demons to monitor you, attack you, and stop you from fulfilling the assignments they could damage their agenda. You'll notice attacks that come in clusters: financial crisis, followed by health issues, followed by relationship problems, followed by mental attacks that all happen within a short time frame, because that's not coincidence or bad luck. That's coordinated demonic strategy attempting to overwhelm you before you can recover from one battle and prepare for the next. You'll experience attacks on your mind through depression, anxiety, and thoughts that don't align with your character but feel overwhelming and real, because you're not just dealing with your own thoughts, you're dealing with demonic suggestions designed to make you quit, compromise, or destroy yourself before you become the weapon God is shaping you to be. You'll face supernatural opposition where doors slam shut for no logical reason, opportunities evaporate at the last minute, people turn against you without explanation, and circumstances conspire against you in ways that defy natural explanation, because there's a spiritual force working overtime to ensure you never reach the place of authority and influence where your anointing could shift entire regions and liberate masses of people from bondage. And here's what separates dangerously anointed people from regular Christians. When the warfare intensifies, instead of running away from God or compromising to make it stop, you press in deeper, worship harder, pray longer, and refuse to abandon your post because you understand that the level of attack is confirmation of the level of anointing, and hell doesn't waste resources fighting people who pose no threat to their kingdom. The second sign that you're carrying dangerous anointing is that people can't stay neutral about you. They either love you intensely or hate you irrationally, with very few people remaining indifferent because the anointing on your life forces people to choose sides and exposes what's really in their hearts. Luke 2:34-35 records Simeon prophesying over baby Jesus that he would be a sign that would be spoken against and that a sword would pierce through Mary's own soul, revealing that even Jesus' anointing created division and forced people to declare where they stood. And if you're dangerously anointed, you'll experience this same phenomenon where your mere presence makes religious people uncomfortable, your standards convict people who claim to be Christians, your obedience exposes others' compromise, and your refusal to participate in church politics or tolerate false teaching makes you a target for people who want you silenced, removed, or discredited. You'll lose friends who claim they left because you changed, when the truth is that your anointing exposed their fakeness and they couldn't maintain the friendship without being convicted by the standard of holiness that your life represents, without you even preaching at them. You'll have family members turn against you not because you did anything to them, but because your commitment to God makes them feel guilty about their own lukewarm Christianity, and instead of dealing with their conviction, they deal with you by creating distance, spreading rumors, or painting you as extreme, judgmental, or self-righteous. You'll experience betrayal from people you trusted, abandonment from people you invested in, and rejection from circles you thought were your tribe, because the anointing on your life is like light entering a dark room. It exposes everything, and people who want to hide their sin, their motives, or their hypocrisy can't do that in your presence, so they remove themselves or try to remove you. And what's fascinating is that the people who hate you often can't articulate why. They just know they're uncomfortable around you, threatened by you, or triggered by you, because it's not actually you they're responding to. It's the anointing you carry that their flesh or their demons recognize as dangerous to the kingdom of darkness they're serving, consciously or unconsciously. Meanwhile, other people will be drawn to you supernaturally, will feel safe in your presence, will open up about struggles they've never told anyone, and will experience breakthrough just from being around you, because the anointing isn't just for you, it's for the deliverance, healing, and freedom of everyone God assigns to your life. The third sign that marks you as dangerously anointed is that you go through seasons of intense isolation, where God removes people, closes social circles, and strips away relationships that once felt essential, because He's preparing you for an assignment that requires complete dependence on Him rather than human validation, support, or approval. Exodus 3:1 reveals that Moses was alone in the wilderness tending sheep when God appeared in the burning bush and called him to deliver Israel. In 1 Kings 17 verses 2-6 describes how God sent Elijah to a brook in the wilderness where ravens fed him in isolation before he could confront Ahab and Jezebel. And if you're dangerously anointed, you'll go through similar seasons where God intentionally isolates you, not as punishment, but as preparation, because the assignment He's called you to is so significant that you cannot carry it successfully if you're still dependent on people's opinions, addicted to crowds, or looking for human approval to validate your obedience. You'll find yourself in a season where invitations stop coming, friendships fade without explanation, your phone stops ringing, and the crowds that once surrounded you disappear until you're standing alone wondering what you did wrong when you didn't do anything wrong. God is doing something right by removing everyone who would distract you, dilute your message, or compromise your assignment during this crucial season of preparation and transformation. You'll experience loneliness that feels unbearable at times, silence from heaven that tests your faith, and obscurity that makes you question whether God forgot about you, when the reality is that He's protecting you from premature exposure, shielding you from people who would abort your assignment, and developing in you the character, humility, and complete dependence on Him that you'll need when He releases you from the wilderness into the assignment that will put you in front of crowds, platforms, and opportunities, where, if you're still seeking human approval or depending on people's support, you'll compromise, burn out, or abandon your calling the first time it costs you popularity. And here's what separates dangerously anointed people from those who quit in the wilderness. Instead of becoming bitter about the isolation, resentful about the silence, or desperate to force your way back into crowds and relevance, you embrace the season as sacred preparation. You develop intimacy with God that crowds could never give you. And you emerge from the wilderness with such clarity, authority, and power that when God releases you, hell recognizes immediately that you're not the same person who entered the isolation. You're a weapon that's been sharpened, tested, and prepared for war. The fourth sign that you're carrying dangerous anointing is that you experience uncommon favor in unexpected places, while simultaneously facing rejection in places where you expected acceptance, revealing that God is orchestrating divine connections and supernatural provision that bypass human gatekeepers and religious systems. 1 Samuel 16, 1-13 describes how David was anointed king while still a shepherd boy, rejected by his own family, demonstrating that dangerous anointing often comes with favor that doesn't make sense to people observing your life from the outside. And if you're dangerously anointed, you'll experience moments where doors open that you never knocked on, where resources appear from sources you never pursued, where opportunities come from people who have no logical reason to help you, and where God provides in ways that bypass every natural channel you thought you needed, because your assignment is so significant that if God left it up to human systems, religious structures, or normal processes, you never get the platform, the resources, or the access required to fulfill what He's called you to do. You'll have strangers feel compelled to bless you, secular people respect and help you more than religious people do, and enemies who intended to destroy you end up being forced to promote you, because the favor on your life isn't based on your networking, your credentials, or your ability to impress people. It's based on God's sovereign choice to position you for an assignment that requires supernatural backing. But simultaneously, you'll face rejection from places where you expected acceptance. Churches that should welcome you will close their doors. Leaders who should recognize your calling will ignore or criticize you. Opportunities that seemed perfect for your gifts will fall through, and systems that typically promote people with your talents will overlook you because God is protecting you from platforms you're not ready for, connections that would corrupt you, and systems that would control you and require you to compromise your message or bow to their agenda in exchange for their approval. And what's crucial to understand is that the favor you're experiencing in unexpected places is God's confirmation that He's your source, not people, not systems, not religious structures, and that the rejection you're facing in expected places is God's protection from assignments that look good but would actually derail you from the specific calling He's prepared you for, that won't require you to play political games, compromise your standards, or submit to human gatekeepers who would try to control what God has anointed you to say and do. The fifth sign that marks you as dangerously anointed is that you carry a message, standard, or calling that makes religious people more uncomfortable than sinners, and you find that broken people, outcasts, and those labeled as unreachable are drawn to you, while church folks, religious leaders, and respectable Christians find reasons to distance themselves, criticize you, or label you as extreme. Matthew 9:10-13 records how Jesus ate with tax collectors and sinners, while the Pharisees questioned His associations. And Luke 7:39 describes how a sinful woman felt comfortable enough to approach Jesus and wash His feet with her tears, while religious leaders judged both her and Him for the interaction. And if you're dangerously anointed, you'll notice this same pattern, where the people society has written off, the ones church hurt, the addicts everyone gave up on, the prostitutes, the criminals, the broken, and the messy feel supernaturally drawn to you and experience freedom in your presence, because your anointing isn't religious performance, it's genuine power that sees past people's sin to their potential and offers them hope that religion never gave them.
You'll have drug addicts get delivered in conversation with you. People bound in sexual sin find freedom after one encounter. Individuals who haven't stepped in a church in years suddenly hungry for God after being around you. And outcasts who religious people rejected experience acceptance and transformation because the anointing you carry doesn't require people to clean up before they come close. It's the very thing that cleans them up when they encounter it. But simultaneously, religious people will be threatened by you. Church leaders will question your methods. Traditional Christians will criticize your associations. And respectable believers will accuse you of compromising standards or lowering the bar, when the reality is that you're operating in the same anointing Jesus carried that made religious people want to kill him while sinners wanted to follow him. You'll preach messages that convict comfortable Christians, challenge religious systems, expose hypocrisy, and demand holiness in ways that make church people defensive, while simultaneously offering grace to the broken in ways that make them feel hope for the first time. And this combination will create a ministry that looks nothing like traditional Christianity, but looks exactly like Jesus' ministry that turned religion upside down and gave access to people religion had locked out.
The sixth and most definitive sign that you're dangerously anointed is that you carry an assignment that, if you're faithful to complete it, will cost you everything you're naturally attached to: comfort, reputation, relationships, security, and approval, but will produce fruit that outlasts your lifetime and impacts generations you'll never meet. 2 Timothy 4:6-7 records Paul declaring at the end of his life that he had fought the good fight, finished the race, and kept the faith, acknowledging that his dangerous anointing cost him everything, including ultimately his life, but produced fruit that's still feeding the church 2,000 years later. And if you're dangerously anointed, you'll sense in your spirit that the assignment God has called you to isn't a side hobby, a part-time ministry, or a casual involvement. It's an all-consuming calling that will require you to lay down everything you're holding on to, sacrifice everything you're comfortable with, and surrender everything you've built if it conflicts with what God is building through you. You'll face moments where God asks you to choose between your reputation and your obedience, between your comfort and your calling, between keeping people happy and keeping God's command. And the choice you make in those moments will determine whether you fulfill your dangerous anointing or abort it by choosing safety over surrender. You'll be asked to preach messages that will cost you platforms, take stands that will cost you relationships, make decisions that will cost you opportunities, and maintain standards that will cost you acceptance, because dangerous anointing isn't given to people who want to be liked. It's given to people who want to be obedient regardless of the cost. And what separates those who fulfill their dangerous anointing from those who settle for comfortable Christianity is the willingness to count the cost and pay it anyway, knowing that temporary loss of earthly comfort, approval, and security is nothing compared to eternal fruit, the approval of God, and the reality of standing before Jesus one day and hearing "well done," rather than wondering what could have been if you'd had the courage to be dangerously anointed instead of comfortably religious. What makes these 6 signs particularly significant is how they separate casual Christians from consecrated warriors, religious people from dangerously anointed vessels, and those who want God's blessing from those who want God's presence, regardless of what that presence cost them in earthly terms. Acts 4:13 describes how the religious leaders recognized Peter and John as having been with Jesus, not because of their education or credentials, but because of the boldness, authority, and power they carried that could only come from intimate time in God's presence. And Acts 19:15 records demons saying, "Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are you?" revealing that hell has a registry of people whose anointing is dangerous enough to be recognized, monitored, and targeted at the highest levels of demonic hierarchy. The biblical truth is that dangerous anointing isn't for everyone, because not everyone is willing to pay the price it requires. The isolation, the warfare, the sacrifice, the rejection, the misunderstanding, and the cost of carrying an assignment that will mark you as different, separate you from crowds, and position you as a threat to every religious system, demonic structure, and comfortable Christianity that opposes God's kingdom advancing through consecrated vessels who refuse to be controlled, corrupted, or silenced. The question isn't whether these signs are present in your life. The question is whether you'll embrace them as confirmation that you're on the right path, or allow the enemy to convince you that something is wrong with you, when actually something is dangerously right, and hell is panicking because they recognize that if you don't quit, if you don't compromise, and if you don't back down from the calling God placed on your life, you're going to do damage to the kingdom of darkness that they cannot repair. If you recognize these signs of dangerous anointing in your life and you're tired of doubting whether you're crazy or called, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this video so the algorithm pushes it to other dangerously anointed people who need confirmation that they're not alone in the warfare, the isolation, or the cost. Comment below what country you're watching from and which sign confirmed what you've been experiencing. Share this message with someone who's been under intense attack and questioning whether they should quit. They need to know they're not cursed. They're dangerously anointed, and hell is terrified of what happens when they fully step into their assignment. Until next time, stay blessed.